So maybe, just maybe, we start again and again, we get addicted to it because starting lets us feel transformed without actually being changed. Welcome to the Endlessly Elated Podcast. I'm your host, Kathleen Pagan, founder of Endlessly Elated, cook, designer, storyteller, and soon-to-be author. But at heart, I'm a woman endlessly curious about what it means to live with intention. Week after week, we'll slow down, reflect, ask life's big questions, and uncover the lessons that help us live more thoughtfully. Welcome to this week's episode. I've lingered on this one for a while, and it recently came to mind when I was sitting with a friend on this very subject. There's something intoxicating about starting something new. It feels electric. It's that moment where everything seems possible, the strong pull of what could be, the addiction of potential, of that picture-perfect ending. To me, beginnings whisper, this is your moment, as if possibility alone is enough. I've come to know that starting something new is a clean slate wrapped with the hope that this time we will become the version of ourselves we've pictured becoming all along. You know, that perfectly polished, flawless in theory, unfazed by doubt or comparison, fully manifested version of ourselves. Convinced that somehow being human is optional. I guess that's why we're so addicted to starting, but finishing? That's a whole different story. The truth is, I believe, the part we rarely admit, is that beginnings are easy to love because they ask nothing of us. There's no vulnerability, no exposure, or even reckoning with our limiting beliefs or fears, which we all have. At their core, beginnings are all vision and absolutely no test. They simply let us stay suspended in the dream, protected from the weight of bringing it into the world. But somewhere between that first spark, thought, idea, and that finish line, we shift. Quietly, sometimes without notice. The momentum fades, the enthusiasm settles, and what once felt thrilling starts to feel ordinary, mundane. If this were a movie, we've reached the middle, the part where the plot slows just enough to reveal what the character is truly made of. They don't call it the valley of disappointment without reason. The middle has officially dropped you off and told you it's time to buckle up because here's where vision stops carrying you. And it's here that the truth of why we hesitate, I think, why we delay or turn back, finally starts to reveal itself. I've come to understand that beneath every delayed ending, every paused project, every I'll come back to it soon, there's something deeper at play, something more human, something we don't always have the language for. But here's what I know. It's never because we are lazy or because we are undisciplined. And it is certainly not because we don't have the skills to finish, although we might convince ourselves of these very things. It's that finishing asks for something, starting never will. The reasons are far more complex than I think we ever admit. We stop because finishing forces us to confront what starting lets us avoid. The fear of being seen, the pressure of getting it right, the weight of our own expectations. We stop because perfection feels safer than progress. Because the outcome might not match the dream we've been carrying for years. Because once something is finished, it can be judged, measured, misunderstood even. Because some of us tie our worth to the result, and completing it feels like burning ourselves at the stake. So maybe, just maybe, we start again and again, we get addicted to it, because starting lets us feel transformed without actually being changed. I think if starting is hope, then finishing is our truth. And that truth requires a kind of honest openness most of us were never taught to withstand. And I think that's the part we run from, not the work or the effort, but the truth we meet when the illusion falls away and the only thing left is our real self. For over 500 days, that's about a year and a half, but who's counting? I lived inside a middle I couldn't control, a finish line I haven't quite reached. I was pitching my cookbook proposal to literary agent after literary agent, pouring my heart and soul into every email, every query, every version of what I hoped someone would finally see. I'd hit send, I'd breathe, refresh, pretend I'm not waiting, and do it all again 4 to 6 weeks later as the good student I always strive to be. And for so long, all I heard was no. Not unkind no's, just silence or polite rejections that all began to sound the same. Thank you for sharing. This isn't the right fit. We wish you the best. After a while, the words blurred into one another until they started to mean something they didn't. You are not enough. There's something about repetition that starts to wear on your spirit. Each click of send felt a little heavier, each refresh of the inbox a little more desperate. You start measuring your worth by the response you don't get, and when silence becomes familiar, you begin to mistake it for a mirror that reflects not your work, but your fears about yourself. Because that's the thing about waiting for someone else's yes. It can make your entire identity feel like it's sitting in someone else's hands and blurs the line between the worth of the work and the worth of the woman creating the work. By the time I got my yes, the 7th submission, and again, who's counting? It wasn't a celebration that came first, contrary to what you may have seen on social media. It was relief. And just as quickly as it came, it went, because even that yes wasn't my ending. It was just another doorway into a longer middle, a lengthier finish line. Because that yes didn't guarantee a book deal. It just means the waiting begins again. This time, the waiting for the publisher. And this kind of waiting, long waits, have a different texture. I still cook dinner, I answer my emails, I go on with my life. But there's always that thread tugging in the background whispering, will it happen? Will I get the email? And I guess that's the thing about trying to get to the finish line. It tests not just your patience, but your sense of worth. It asks you to keep showing up when no one's watching, when fear is louder than belief, and even when you start doubting what you believed in so fearlessly. And when you've been building something alone for that long, you start to hear your own voice differently. Some days it's confident, other days it's pleading. You catch yourself trying to sound brave even when you're unraveling. It's the strangest thing to be both the dreamer and the doubter, sharing the same room in your mind. To want something so deeply and to fear at the same time what finishing it might reveal. Because like I said, finishing means being seen. It means facing the truth of what the work is and what it isn't. There's so many days I sit at my desk and think, maybe it's not supposed to happen for me. Maybe I've been asking for too much. Maybe the dream was simply meant to stay a dream. Because faith, when tested, isn't graceful. It's the quiet fight to believe again after disappointment, to numb yourself with distraction so you don't spiral into self-comparison. It's waking up on a Tuesday, sitting at your desk, and trying again without any reason to believe that this time it'll be different. I guess it's staying when it would be easier to walk away. What I've learned, though, is that waiting isn't punishment, and finishing isn't just the last step of a project. What it really is the last layer of self-doubt you're willing to release. The moment you stop protecting yourself with the potential of you and choose to stand behind what you've created, seeing it through until the very end. Even now, I'm still in it. I'm still waiting on a publisher, still living in the in-between. And I'd be lying if I said it was easy. Some mornings, the silence feels heavier than the hope. But I know that silence isn't a sign to stop. It doesn't mean the work isn't worthy, on my good days, of course. It just means that external validation isn't the point. You see, this is the part you won't get to see the before and after photo. You'll just have the evidence inside yourself that you didn't give up, that it happened in the quiet, behind closed doors, when you're staring at the screen for the 100th time, whispering to yourself, "You've got this." And I think that's when the most meaningful parts of our lives happen, in the middle, moving forward inch by inch, doing whatever it takes to keep hope from slipping through your fingers before you reach the finish line. It's human, is what I call it. And that's what the cookbook journey is teaching me, to understand that what I'm really creating isn't just a cookbook. It's the proof that I'm still here, still staying. And maybe that's the real finish line, not the book itself, but the woman who's writing it. When I step back and think about all of this, finishing, fear, the long middle, I realize how many of us live with a quiet tension we rarely acknowledge, the tug of war between who we hope to be and who we're afraid we might become, between the life we picture and the life we're actually building, step by unglamorous step. And it's that space, the gap between the imagined and the lived, where so much of our struggle quietly lives. I think we forget how often we invite ourselves into something new with certainty, only to abandon ourselves along the way. Not because we don't want it, but because wanting something comes with its own weight. There's a particular vulnerability in pursuing the things that matter to us, a kind of exposure that doesn't exist in the dream stage. The moment you move from imagining to attempting, the dream is no longer theoretical. It starts to ask something of you. And I know you've been there. We all have. The moment where you're so close to the thing you want, and suddenly everything in you starts to hesitate. It's the point where you're not just proving whether the dream can work, but quietly wondering what it will mean about you if it doesn't. And that's the part I think we don't talk about enough, about how easy it is to confuse our progress with our worth, how we start to believe that if the outcome falls short, maybe we do too, how we learn, often without realizing it, to protect ourselves with distance. It looks like waiting for the right time or one more edit, but underneath it, it's often a way of cushioning ourselves from what the end might say. The distance is so wide that some days stopping seems safer than trying. And anyone on the outside might look at your stalled project or the thing you keep saying you'll return to and see procrastination. But you know better. You know it's not laziness and it's not indifference. It's the weight of your own hope, the fear that if you give everything you have and still it doesn't work out, you'll have nothing left to stand behind. It's that quiet calculation that we've all done of, if I never finish, I never have to find out whether I was capable or not. So when you find yourself lingering in the almost, hovering in that space where you could finish but you don't, maybe the question isn't, why am I like this? Maybe the real question is, what am I afraid this ending will say about me? And underneath that, what part of me am I trying to protect? If you're listening on the free feed, this is where today's episode ends. To continue this conversation on how we actually move toward the finish line, not just in theory, but in practice, join me inside the subscriber space. You'll find the link in the show notes. Please make sure to follow wherever you're listening, and if you feel called to share it with someone who might need it too, I'd be so grateful. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll meet you back here next Monday.